There's an insightful point to be made about the story of the game warden who heard about a man who was suspected of illegal fishing. So he went undercover, became casual friends with the man, asked him to take him fishing, which he did. So they get in the boat and they're flying out to his honey hole, and the game warden looks around, the undercover game warden looks around, he doesn't see any fishing rods, which he thought was odd. But they go nevertheless on to the spot, turns off the motor and kills it, reaches in, gets his tackle box out, opens it up, gets his net out, reaches into the tackle box, pulls out a stick of dynamite, he lights it, he throws it way up in the air, and just as the butt of it hits the river, it explodes, and hundreds of stunned fish float up to the top, and he gets his net and he starts scooping them out. The game warden was furious. He jumps up, stands up in the boat, pulls out his badge, and he said, I knew it. He said, I'm the game warden, and son, you're in a heap of trouble. He said, you're going to receive either the hugest fine that's ever been levied around here, or worse, you're going to be arrested and go to jail. What do you have to say to yourself, about yourself? To which the guy calmly reaches into the tackle box, pulls out another stick of dynamite, lights it, shoves it over to the game warden and said, you want to talk or you want to fish? Well, I believe that's the question. That's the question that every Christian and every church and every congregation throughout the world, and specifically this congregation, has to ask as we stand here at the end of another year and look over into the new year that's upon us. Are we simply going to talk about the mission of Jesus? Or are we going to be about the mission of Jesus? There is a difference. Are we going to talk about being followers of Jesus and fishers of men? Or are we going to be followers of Jesus and fishers of men who make disciples? That's why 2 weeks ago we announced that after much prayer from our shepherds asking God to reveal to them what he wanted Crosspoint to be about, for 2015, the clear answer that our shepherds received from God was this: go and make disciples. Now, intellectually, all of us know that's what Jesus said in Matthew 28. Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe everything I've commanded you. And surely, Jesus said, I'll be with you always. Isn't that a promise you want to claim? Even to the end of the age. I dare say that all of us are in agreement with that statement, that that's what God wants us to be about. But the $1,000,000 question is this: are we going to go and make disciples? Did you notice that Jesus on that mountain didn't call his disciples together and tell them, I got a suggestion for you? And that suggestion is for you to go and meet and discuss how you can get our brethren to attend the synagogue services more frequently. Even though we know in Luke chapter 4 that attending the synagogue assembly was paramount for Jesus. He wouldn't have missed it. It was his custom. It was customary for him to do so, and he loved to do so. But Jesus has just spent 3 years of his life investing in 12 men. And now, a few weeks after his death on the cross and his triumphal resurrection, 11 of them are still faithful to him. And he calls the 11 together and he reminds them not only to be faithful, but he calls them together for the purpose of commissioning them to bring the entire world to himself. And amazingly, they did that. And I believe with everything that God has graciously bestowed upon us, there's no reason why we cannot do the same thing today. Last Tuesday morning, a couple of our shepherds, and Brother Mark Killen and I, had the privilege of meeting with a young man who spent the entire last year on a college campus in North Carolina making disciples and mentoring them to go and make disciples and multiply themselves. And when they leave that university, they've been taught to go. And not only to be actively involved in a local church, but to go and invest in someone else and teach them all that they know about Jesus, so that they in turn will go and do the same with someone else. I want to quickly say two things about that. This evangelistic young man understood that there's a huge difference between being a member of a local church and being a disciple. Do you believe that? I do. Because a member can come and warm a pew, but a disciple of Jesus warms the hearts of people by making disciples and teaching them to follow Jesus. A member can come to services and can come to receive, but a disciple comes and he pours out and gives, and he goes out to serve and proclaim. There is a difference. A member knows about God, and a member knows about Jesus. And they can have their names listed on a membership directory. But a disciple, listen closely, knows Christ and the power of the resurrection and the fellowship of his suffering. And there is a difference. A disciple is intentional about making Christ known and making other disciples. I hope you can see the difference. So this young man told us that he had a threefold strategy on that university campus. And it was this, listen closely, to love the world, to help many, and to invest in a few. And one of our shepherds said that's exactly what Jesus did, didn't he? He loved the world, he helped many, he invested in a few. And that's what we hope to do better here at Cross Point in 2015. Locally, I believe we love the world around us here in Florence. And that's why so many of you have invested heavily in the recovery community and in our neighbors and friends at Cherry Hill. And that's why many of you have invested in Christian education, and why so many of you have invested in helping the hungry and the poor. But this next year we want to do a better job of taking things to the next level and reaching those people whom we have helped and whom we continue to help and whom we invest in with what they really need, which is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so, like was stated in the State of the Church address, we're going to intentionally strive this next year to be laser focused on being disciples, being a disciple, learning what that really means, to walk in the footsteps of Jesus. And we're going to strive to be laser focused this next year in developing spiritually mature disciples and followers of Jesus Christ. Because we love not only the local world, but we love the world globally as well. The precious souls of people in Tanzania and in India and in Zimbabwe and in Antigua and in Estonia and Kenya and Panama and Mexico and the Samoas. And because of people whom we love, like the Smelsers and the Flynn's and the Englishes and the Koschoriks and Sister Charlotte Hackett and Haley and Noma and the Rosses, because they have invested their lives in those foreign places that are full of people who are close to their heart and the heartbeat of God and need help and hope in the gospel of Jesus Christ, we've prayerfully and personally and financially invested in all of those families that I've just mentioned. And I believe we're partners, don't you, in the great cause of all. I'm always encouraged and blessed whenever we get to hear from those whom we love, who stepped out by faith and left the comforts and security of home to go and share the gospel in a vastly different culture with a vastly different way of life. And one of those families is Jerry and Trina and Parker and Chandler Ross. And they felt called this last year to go and stepped out by faith and left the comforts and security of here to go to Estonia to strive to make disciples and to help those current Christians there learn even more what relationships are all about, the two greatest relationships of all. We love Jerry and Trina and Parker and Chandler. All four of them are wonderful disciples and missionaries and evangelists, and we're grateful that they are home for 2 weeks. And so I've asked Brother Jerry to spend the rest of our time this morning sharing with us how they're going about making disciples there in Estonia. Would you give your attention to our brother, Jerry Ross?
Well, good morning. If it's hard for me to wipe the smile off my face, I apologize. It's just so wonderful to be here and to look out and see all of you. It's just so good to be back. I can't begin to describe it. I'll try to a little bit. I brought notes to kind of keep me on track. I've got a short little video at the end of this short talk, and then I'll come back up for just a couple of closing statements. But I want to thank Frank for allowing me this time, and it's hard to follow Frank Mills. You know, I kind of wish I could have went first because that's Frank, you know. And I think you got the Flynn's here and the Shepherds and you got the Smelters. You really have a lot more qualified people to be here right now. But I appreciate the time. And what awesome song leading you have here. I know that because I have to lead the songs in Tartu, and that's terrible, you know. But if you heard them sing, you'd know it's just as bad as my leading. So if y'all are watching over in Tartu, it's the truth. I'm sorry. But how many of you have ever said this to your kids? Because I said so. Have y'all ever said that? Did you ever, as a kid, say, I will never say that to my kids, and then you do it? You know, you're a hypocrite? Well, before I get into all that, let me say how good God is. God is good, isn't He? Anything good you hear me say today, it's Him. Okay? Anything good that we did in the past working here, or anything good that's going to come in the future, that's Him. Anytime you hear me say something foolish or silly, that's me. Okay? So let's go ahead and just get that out of the way. The next thing I'd just like to say is it's good to come home. You know, we joke about on Facebook with people about the food, you know, what we're going to eat. You know, we make a list. I don't know how many times we said, okay, this is number one. The first place we went to is Chick-fil-A as soon as we got to the Nashville airport. And then we were all sick like 30 minutes later because that's the first fried food we've had in 6 months. But the food, yeah, you know, you miss things. You know, like it's been so good to ride around in my truck, Trina's truck. You know, to go to the store and put stuff in the back and not have to walk carrying it. You know, that's just great. But what's really been the best is to see you all. You know, and I wish we had more time. If we could just stand here and just be hugged by everybody, that would be the best. We love you guys, and we thank you. I'd like to thank the leadership here at Crosspoint, the elders, the deacons, the mission committee, and staff for their vision when it comes to missions. You know, God said that when His people lack vision, you know, that's a bad thing. They fail for their lack of vision, and Crosspoint has never been short on vision. And without you guys, it wouldn't be possible, for us to be over there. So I don't know if that's a good thing. I need to thank y'all for sending us. Okay. Yes, thank you. Without y'all, it wouldn't be. But not only the financial support, the prayers, the FaceTime messages, you know, the little emails, the occasional snail mail. You know, I hated mail when we lived here. And I love mail. you go down and I check that little box at the bottom of the apartment, and I'm just like, hell, somebody wrote something to us, and I take it up the 73 stairs, and, after I get my asthma medicine, I share it with Trina and Chandler and Parker. But thank you. I'd also like to take a second to thank Trina and the boys, because without them, y'all know if it was just me, it'd be a mess. But with them, they're the greatest examples I could hope for. And if you want to pat anybody on the back, give it to them, okay? I've thought a lot about what I would share with you guys this morning from Estonia. I thought I could tell you about how they look like us, but they're different, so different. I thought I could tell you about a lot of the different foods, and we've joked about that on Facebook. The milk in bags, the ice cream in tubes, the blood and sausage. Oh, I'm sorry, Merlin, if you're watching. Well, I made chicken and dressing for our Christmas dinner before we came over here, and she looked at that dressing and she goes, well, that looks gross. And I said, it doesn't have blood in it. So there's a lot of things we could share with you guys, but how we ride our bikes everywhere or walk, had to get the boys snow tires on their bicycles. Isn't that funny? Snow tires. The 73 stairs I mentioned. How spiritually dark Estonia is. It's a very dark place, not just because the sun doesn't come up very often. Spiritually. You've all heard the numbers about the country before from John and Will and the different people that have been over there. And I've got a report, if you'd like me to email you, a report on all those numbers. But I didn't want to do the same thing that I've done before and that you've heard before. I kind of wanted to share with you guys what it's been like for our family. Because you are our family. Right? We've been going to this church for, I know not this building, but with you for 20 years. That's hard to believe. I'm old enough to say I've known some of y'all for 20 years. And with family, there are ups and downs. And I didn't want this to be a report. I wanted it to be, like when Uncle Bob shows up and you're like, well, how's it been, Bob? And Bob tells you. He doesn't say, well, let me tell you about the, he shares. So I thought that's what we would do. Some of y'all know this. It's been tough. Now, I'm not going to compare what we're doing with like what the Flynn's have done and the Shepherds and the Smelsers, because they've been there like a long time. But I guess they would probably tell you that first 6 months is pretty tough. God has taken me to school many times in Estonia. There were things that I thought I knew. Y'all ever do that like me? I thought at 42, I had a pretty good handle on things, Mickey. But He's taken me to school on a lot of different things. I figured since Trina and I, and even the boys, had been on some short-term trips, that I knew what to expect, that there wasn't a problem that I couldn't handle. But one thing we learned was living in a country is very different from visiting that country. The words that Jeff and Jamie told us a few years ago rang true. She said that the people in Estonia will not pretend like they like you or know you until they like you and know you. She said they're very hard on the outside, but soft on the inside once they get to know you. I mean, you look at that country, they've been pushed around for 1,000 years by everybody around them, told what to believe or what not to believe when it comes to God. So now they've been free for a little over 20 years. I think they're still trying to figure out who they are. And a lot of them don't want to hear anything about God. I mean, they still talk about World War II. They call it the war. And I was like, to a lot of our kids, that's as distant as the Civil War, but to them it's still very real because it was fought there, some of the war. It's so dark and cold. Y'all seen some of those pictures? You just kind of keep your face down, when you're walking and that biting wind's blowing into your face. And I think that kind of contributes to the mindset of the people. They don't want to make eye contact with you when you're walking. You're like nod people, hey, how you doing? And they're like looking at you like, why are you talking to me? We've got a neighbor downstairs from us named Pekka. He's a Finnish man, 64 years old, and he just moved to Estonia not too long ago. And he said, the people here in Estonia remind me of people who've been in prison. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, they just keep their head down and they keep to themselves. And I thought, that's pretty accurate. Estonia has been a spiritual prison for a lot of the people, and a lot of them don't even know it. You know, I thought about the people in Africa and India and even Mexico where we've been, and Antigua, and you'll see people that don't have anything physically, but they're joyful. And in Estonia, it's a lot of people will have a roof over their head and food to eat, you know, even Wi-Fi, but there's no joy. That's one of the biggest differences that we've noticed. I mean, how can people with so little in so many places have so much joy, and in other places have so much and have so little joy? And I thought, we're like that a lot of times. Many of the people that live in Estonia are spiritually bankrupt. Some of y'all may have heard Sonny tell the story when he got back of a lady he was talking to in a little place that he found to get breakfast in the morning that was about as close to our breakfast as you could find. And he said, well, what do you think about God, after a few mornings of chatting with her? And she said, in Estonia, we don't need God, we need money. You know, and we go, oh, but we do that sometimes too here. There's just a few of the things that you notice on a short trip that you really start to pick up after the honeymoon phase is kind of worn off. Now keep in mind, not long after we arrived, summer ended, and the people went back to work, back to schools, back to their lives, just like everyone does here. And the reality kind of to set in for us. And we had some very lonely times. And I'm thankful we were all together. But to have this, your family, your church family, is such a blessing that I like to think I didn't take things for granted very much when we lived here, but I did. And you miss this. There have been some lonely days in Tartu, but there have been some good days. We have laughed in that little apartment, laughed with them. You guys are going to see that video, a lot of smiling faces. You know, that's during the summer. Fun times. But it's hard when you see those kids over at one of our little Friday night gatherings, you know, watching movies, eating popcorn, playing cards, and they're laughing and cutting up. And like none of them has made a commitment to follow Jesus. They don't really want to talk about him. Like I said in the Thanksgiving video a few weeks ago that you guys saw, believe it or not, Chandler and Parker have missed school. Really? Oh yeah, they've missed school. So is their mama, homeschooling them. The boys have missed their friends at school, at Cross Point, in the neighborhood. We've missed Sonny and Linda. Now, I know, y'all know I love my mother-in-law, sitting right over there. My father-in-law home, laid up on the couch sick, but not like I do now. We appreciate things. We really do take things for granted. I've even missed going to work. You believe that? How many of y'all have thought, man, I'd like to go on a mission trip like that? And I've missed the routine, the familiar. You know, you walk out, and though a lot of people can understand English when you talk to them, they'd rather speak in their native tongue. And I can't read the paper, I can't read the signs, I can't watch the news, I don't know what's going on. You know, I feel that way most of the time. You know, I have to ask somebody, hey, will you go to the store and help me find this? And I'm just like, I'm 42 years old. I used to know how to get stuff done in Florence, Alabama, but I'm kind of lost over there. We're figuring it out. We've missed the college group. I want to take a second to thank them for keeping in contact with us. We knew they loved us before we left, but we know now even more. They keep in contact. Tyler Jean will send a message every now and then. And I'm just like, oh, so good. Look, Tyler, send me a message. I suppose as a man, I thought I had a pretty good handle on things. Marriage, family, the kids, work. But I have asked many times in Estonia, why? Why, God? Why did you see fit to open this door? I don't know if many of y'all know this, but I wasn't too excited about leaving this. I spent many times in Frank's office sharing my frustrations and fears because I love America. If you don't really appreciate it too much, go leave for a little while. You'll come back loving it even more. I know we've got our problems, and I would never want to offend anyone from another country because I've been to a lot of different places, but this is a great place we live in. God has blessed this country and its people. And two of my favorite topics, politics and religion. And I'm not supposed to talk about those? That's all I want to talk about over there. And Batman. But, so, sorry. I still believe this is the greatest country in the world to live in. And I'm not disparaging anyone else's. I just love this country. And some of you may not know, but Trina, along with a couple other ladies, were just beginning a business before we left. Chandler and Parker were going into 2 and very, very important years at school. And it was becoming apparent that God was opening this door for us to go, as hard as I was trying to keep it closed. But during those conversations with the Lord that I would have, and I was telling him how I really don't think we're the family for this, I would always try to end it with, it's not what I want, it's what you want. It's not my will, it's your will. And if some of y'all are thinking, yeah, they really could found somebody better for this than them, you're right. Yeah, there's a lot of people in here that would have been. But I think God has used people throughout the Bible that said, you know, when something good comes of that, they're going to look at me, not at you. Right? So, we were not financially in the best position to go. I tried to explain this to Danny and Nancy. We talked with Danny and Nancy and every other missionary we could get our hands on. And Danny said, and Nancy both, you know, money should never be a reason not to do the Lord's work. He'll make that happen. And I thought, oh, okay. Now I got to go talk to Rebecca. She was in, you know, for the holidays. And I was like, Rebecca, I don't think the boys, you know, this is a good time to carry them. And, you know, it's a real important time in their life. And she was like, it'd be the best thing for your kids. I was like, oh. You know, so then I was like, Dorian, I'll go find Dorian and Sherry. And I was like, Dorian and Sherry, I'm not the guy for this. And he was like, yeah, I think you ought to go. Oh, come on, everybody that I was hoping one of them would say, you know, you're not the one for that. But they just kept telling us we had to go. I thought about our parents getting older. You know, what if something happens with my folks or Trina's folks? All of these qualifications and excuses I kept having come to mind. And then I realized I'd heard many of these excuses before. The money's not right. You're not trained. You're not qualified. Your parents, your children, all of these reasons. And I thought, Jesus had a lot of people tell him those same excuses, didn't he? Jesus would say, come follow me. And he's like, yeah, Jesus, I just bought some cows and I got to go check on that. I just got some land. You know, my dad's sick. And Jesus is like, just go. Right? There were many reasons for us not to go, but the only one that mattered was because Jesus said, because I said so. Right? When you look back at all those heroes of the Bible, and don't misunderstand, I'm not putting myself in there, but you recall Moses giving all the reasons why he couldn't lead God's people. Abraham and Sarah were too old to be parents. David was too young to fight a giant. Saul was overseeing the killing of Christians before running into Jesus. Peter, being a hot-headed fisherman of fish, became a fisherman of men. And all of them saying, we can't do this. And God's going, I know you can't do that, but I can. So thank God he doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. Anything good that comes out of Estonia and us being there, that's him. And when we come back in July, anything good we're able to do then, that'll be him too. The work in Estonia is very slow. You don't get to see the results very quickly. We've just started to see a little bit of what Ron and Judy and Royce did 20 years ago, just now happening. I don't like the slow going. You know, I like to see progress. And Jesus is going, you just throw those seeds. I'll make that grow. You might not get to see anything. But that's not what we're called to do. Right? I'm not called to see it. It seems like the older generation in Estonia is very hard-hearted. But God can soften hard hearts, can He? Can He make bad ground ready? And I have hope for the younger generation coming up. Because you see their faces and you're like, there's hope. There's hope for them. You see the smiles, you see them laughing. I've asked God many times, why did you move things around so much to put us there? And my wise, insightful wife, she said, what if our boys were sick? What if they were dying? Would there be anything you wouldn't do to save them? Would you move heaven and earth to save your kids? And I said, yeah. And God's going, those are my kids over there. I'll move anything around I need to save them. Right? I don't know after July who will be the next people to work in Estonia. But there are a lot of great people here that could do so much good in Estonia. The Christian families, what if I was to tell you about them? There's just less than. We have more Christians meeting in this building than in the entire city of Tartu. More Christians meet in Florence, Alabama than meet in the entire country of Estonia. And 65% of the children in Estonia are born into broken, dysfunctional homes. They need to see an example of a good, God-loving Christian family. And what if it was just, Trina said, what if it was just to love on them and show them Jesus in a family in our just everyday walking around lives? What if it was just for Shirley, the young woman that was baptized in August last year? What if it was just for Shirley? What if it was for someone here or one of our friends on Facebook that may be thinking about a larger commitment to God's work in another country? You know, some of y'all are going, if Jerry could do that, I know I could. That's right. You could. So I've wondered why God moved these things around. But what would you do to help one of your kids? The folks don't appear to have a lot of joy like they do in some countries, but they need Jesus too. As you look around in every direction, you see Christians. And some of y'all, Will Bridges is coming in February to visit. And I think he asked Dorian and Sherry, you know, we're only going to be there for a few days. Will that do any good? And they were like, yes, go visit them. It's so encouraging to have somebody from home to come over. You know, you think, well, what am I going to do? I can't express to you how huge it was to have Sonny and Linda come over for the time they were there. It just gives you that shot in the arm, and you're like, we can make it, right? So if you've thought about that, you know, maybe you could come over and visit. They need more than us in Estonia. They need you. And if you're like, well, my kids are this age, or I'm this age, you know what? If you're still on this side of the dirt, you're good. God can use you. Yeah. If you're still doing that, you could do something. You know, I was introduced a few years ago to a book that I wish Mark hadn't told me about. Radical by David Platt. I hate that book. I'd almost say don't read it because it's going to make you mad, but he said in that book that many of us take the Great Commission as the Great Suggestion. Like we have a choice in the matter. I've had people here that I've run into in Florence, just out and about, they'll go, yeah, but there's people here in Florence that need Jesus too. I'm like, yeah, there are. And we got a church on every corner to tell them about him. But there's places in the world that they haven't even heard his name. And if they have heard his name, they don't know anything about him. I can't remember if it was in that book or somewhere else. I heard a preacher say, what right do we have to sit and hear the gospel 2 or 3 times a week, every week, and there's people that hadn't heard it once? And that started to kind of gnaw on me. You know, I was like, why did he get that book and tell me about that book? And even with the fear and the doubt and the concerns, I kept thinking, standing before God one day and thinking that I've disappointed him scared me worse than going to Estonia. To disappoint him. I opened all those doors for y'all to go and you were afraid. So, I think back the times I would tell the boys to do something and they would say, why? Well, I could try to explain it to you. Just do it. Right? Parker, Chandler, just do it, I said. Okay? You might get another why again, because I said so. I believe many times we think we want to know the why God is saying to do these things, and God is like, the why is too big for you. You can't wrap your head around the why or it would pop. Just do it, because I said so. Right? Many times I've heard that quiet voice, and I believe is the Holy Spirit. Some people may say I need to be on medication for that voice, but I think it's God. And he whispered, do you trust me? Do you trust me? Have y'all ever said that to your kids? Do you know where I'm going? Do you know I'm going to take care of you and your family? Don't be afraid. Do not fear. How many times is that mentioned in the Bible? I've heard 365 times. I haven't gone through and counted it myself. But that's one time for every day. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Why does he have to keep saying that? Because he knows we're big chickens. Right? So every day, all right, God. He's like, I got you. It's going to be okay. Don't be afraid. Romans 10, 13, and 15 says, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. How then can they call on one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in one whom they have not heard? How can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. So what's the last 6 months of this journey going to look like? I don't know. Will I be able to get my job back? I don't know. What will school be like for the boys? I don't know. What will life be like in Lauderdale County, Alabama after a year? I don't know. But I know God. And he says, I got you. Do you trust me? Many of you have heard that story. I'm wrapping this up and then we can put the video on. Many of you have heard the story about this time last year. I was still kind of on the fence. You know, come on, somebody just tell me. I don't think you should do this. And it's looking like we're going to be going. Janie gets baptized at the New Year's service. You know, there's that warm fuzzy. I'm like, oh, okay, you know, this is a good thing. I'm feeling good. And then by the time I get out to the truck, the fear starts to come back over me again. And the boys are like, I guess they can tell when your dad's afraid because they've never seen it before, you know, because I'm so tough. They said, Dad, what's the matter? And I was just fine. I'm tired. Like, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? I'm afraid of leaving. I'm afraid of leaving here, our family, our friends, going somewhere we don't really know. You know, being able to come back and step back into your life again. I'm afraid. And the kids in their wisdom, well, Dad, if God could open all the doors for us to go, can't he open the doors for us to come home? I'm like, oh, man, shut up. You're 10 and 13 years old. You know, but he's right. They were right. So let me show you this video, 3 minutes long, and then we'll close it out.
In my wrestling and in my doubts, in my failures, you won't walk out. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. In the silence, you won't let go. In the questions, your truth will hold. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore.
So that's 6 months in Estonia in three minutes. So, thank you, all of you, for your help, your prayers, your support. And if any of you have heard that still, quiet voice, and you're afraid, that's okay. Don't ignore it. The Holy Spirit doesn't prompt us for later. He prompts us for now. And with God's help, you don't have to be afraid. If any of you have felt that call to make any changes in your life, I'm not talking about moving to Estonia. Maybe it's a smaller change, just to do things a little differently. To begin this new year committed to go outside of your house, outside of this building, into the community, or into the world. I don't think it was the great suggestion. It was the Great Commission. So, if you hear that voice and you feel prompted, feel free to come forward as we stand and sing.